My name is Kipper. I'm the current 3D supervisor at Pixel Magic. I've worked with Lightwave for about 13 or 14 years now. Our most recent project that we used HD Instance for was the Battle for Red Cliff. Our assignment was to recreate the Chinese army and cavalry as they assembled and then charged the enemy. For a lot of the shots in the movie, they had actually hired parts of the Chinese army to come in and ride horses and take the fall as the horses fell under the arrows or the attacks. But for some of the shots, they needed to create thousands of infantry, and so we had to recreate them. And the best approach was to create one or two soldiers and animate them, and then use HD Instance to populate the entire army. So for this shot, our task was to add soldiers to this live action plate of soldiers. So in this area here and back here are all soldiers that were created with HD Instance. To accomplish that, this is one of our soldiers in the scene. So he's standing and then he starts to walk. And then we had created about 5 or 6 slight variations of this cycle, and we applied them via HD Instance to this ground plane object that we see over here where the small soldier is. And this is a representation of where the soldiers are in the scene. But when it's rendered out, HD Instance populates this area with the soldiers and varies their size and slightly the walk cycle in terms of speed. So for this shot, they wanted to fill in more cavalry coming down the hill. It was especially challenging because we had to make the cavalry conform to the terrain of the hillside when they came down. This is the final version where we added all the soldiers and cavalry riding down the hill. So we used HD Instance in a number of shots. Some, it was just the soldiers were in the background, and when you look at the shot, they just look like they're, thousands of soldiers in the background, and there's live action soldiers in the foreground. So they're almost invisible, but that's kind of the point of the shot. And then in other shots, they were completely CG, where we created all the soldiers, all the horses, the backgrounds, everything. So in this shot, everything is computer generated. All the armies, the cavalry were generated with HD Instance. We basically had one long animation cycle of the soldiers running into place and then stopping. And then we used HD Instance to set the offsets in order to get the first rows to come to a halt before the second row. And the third row doesn't really come to a halt until the very end of the shot. HD Instance was also used to duplicate the cavalry and vary the speed of the horses and the animation on the riders and the flags. The second shot in the sequence is the army fully formed. And so again, HD Instance was used to create the horses, the soldiers, the fluttering flags to populate the army. These are the elements that make up the second shot: the army, dust, the CG background. This was the final shot in the sequence when the army charges to attack. In this case, HD Instance was used to take an animation cycle of them running in place and then move each of the soldiers at a slightly different rate, along with the flags and then the cavalry charging away. So these are the individual elements that were used to create the shot. So we have each of the rows of soldiers rendered as an element, and then their shadow pass as a separate element, dust on top of that.